Hello and welcome to Monday in Parliament, our look at the day at Westminster. The headlines. The Defence Secretary says he has full confidence in the Trident nuclear deterrent, but won't give the Commons any details on reports of an unarmed missile going off course in a test last year. Labour have questioned the Prime Minister's response.
And yet when she came to this House on the 18th of July to call on members to back the renewal of Britain's nuclear submarines, she did not say a word, not a single word.
But many Conservative MPs defended Trident and the need to keep the tests secret.
Is it not the case that the unilateralists opposite who are complaining today are in the position of eunuchs complaining about the cost of Viagra?
Also tonight, users of adult social care explain what the shortage of funding means for their lives.
It's now legally acceptable for them to just say we're using continence pads even if you're not incontinent because you can't have a nighttime carer.
But first, the Defence Secretary has told MPs he has full confidence in the Trident nuclear weapons system following reports of an unarmed missile going off course during a test launch. But Sir Michael Fallon would not be drawn on the reports other than to tell MPs not to believe everything they read in the papers. Before an urgent question on the subject from a former Defence Minister, there was a call from the Conservative, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for the Commons to sit in private.
Speaker, as the matters we are about to discuss are of the utmost confidentiality and may give succour to Her Majesty's enemies, I beg to move that the House sit in private.
Under Standing Order number 163, I am obliged to put this question to the House without debate. The question is that the House do sit in private. As many as other have been, say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the noes have it. The noes have it.
In June last year, the Royal Navy conducted a demonstration and shakedown operation designed to certify HMS Vengeance and her crew prior to their return to operations. This included a routine, unarmed Trident missile test launch. Contrary to reports in the weekend press, HMS Vengeance and her crew were successfully tested and certified as ready to rejoin the operational cycle. We do not comment on the detail of submarine operations. I can, however, assure the House that during any test firing, the safety of the crew and public is paramount and is never compromised.
You will have seen the press at the weekend. The claims that the missile veered off towards the United States. Could he confirm whether that was the case? Could he also tell the House when he was first informed that there was a problem with the test and when his department informed the then Prime Minister David Cameron of the problem?
Yesterday, the Prime Minister refused 4 times on live television to say when she became aware of the details of this missile test. Today, Number 10 admitted that the Prime Minister was told about this incident as soon as she took office. And yet, when she came to this House on the 18th of July to call on members to back the renewal of Britain's nuclear submarines, she did not say a word, not a single word. Mr. Speaker, this is just not good enough. The British public deserve the facts on a matter as important as Britain's nuclear deterrent, and they deserve to hear those facts from their Prime Minister, not in allegations sprawled across a Sunday paper.
Is the Secretary of State telling us that nothing went wrong on this particular launch, while accepting that the nuclear deterrent needs to be shrouded in secrecy, it also needs to deter? And once stories get out there that a missile may have failed, isn't it better to be quite frank about it, especially if it has no strategic significance, as in this case it probably has none?
It is absolutely outrageous that this House had to rely on a leak to a Sunday newspaper to find out about this and the subsequent cover-up. Can the Secretary of State tell me, when did he first find out about this missile failure? Was it he who informed the new Prime Minister about the failure? And who took the decision not to inform Parliament of this incident?
Well, the honourable gentleman, of course, is opposed to the Trident deterrent that has kept this country safe for so many years. Let me first of all caution him against believing everything he has read in the weekend press.
Ah, yes, young Gove. Mr. Michael Gove.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Would my right honourable friend agree that investment in our continuous at-sea nuclear deterrent has brought us not only peace since 1968 and the protection of Western Europe, but is also congruent with our position as a permanent 5 member of the UN Security Council? And is it not the case that the unilateralists opposite who are complaining today are in the position of eunuchs complaining about the cost of Viagra?
I agree with all three of my right honourable friends' propositions.
The Secretary of State has advised us not to believe everything we read in the Sunday newspapers, but should we believe the White House official who, while we've been sitting here debating, has confirmed to CNN that the missile did auto-self-destruct off the coast of Florida? And if that is the case, why is the British Parliament and the British public the last people to know?
As I've said, we do not in this House, nor has any previous government, given operational details of the demonstration and shakedown operation of one of our submarines conducting a test with one of our Trident missiles.
Later, in the House of Lords, the historian Lord Hennessy said he witnessed the test last June.
May I declare an interest in that I witnessed the launch in question from the survey vessel 2.5 miles away from where the missile came out of the sea. My Lords, may I put it to the Noble Earl, the Minister, with great respect, that for those of us who support the independent deterrent, very powerfully support it, and also the building of the 4 dreadnought submarines in the successor class, it would make it much easier for us to make the case generally in the country when we're interviewed in the media if the Noble Earl could assure us that a full analysis has been successfully made of whatever it was that went wrong, and I have no knowledge at all of the nature of what went wrong, and that remedies have been put in place.
The Defence Minister, Lord Howe, said there was absolute confidence in the system. Now, the government has launched a new industrial strategy preparing for Britain's post-Brexit future. The plans, personally unveiled by the Prime Minister at a cabinet meeting in Cheshire, include a £556 million boost for the so-called Northern Powerhouse, an overhaul of technical education and a £170 million cash injection for science, technology, engineering and innovation. The Business Secretary told MPs it was about creating the right conditions for new and growing enterprises.
To meet these challenges, we've identified 10 pillars around which this strategy is structured. That is to say, 10 areas of action to drive growth across the economy and in every part of the country. They are to invest in science, research and innovation, to further develop our skills, to upgrade our infrastructure, to support businesses to start and grow, to improve public procurement, to encourage trade and investment, to deliver affordable energy and clean growth, to cultivate world-leading sectors, to drive growth across all parts of the country, and to create the right institutions to bring together sectors and places. Across all of these areas, the government is taking strategic decisions to keep British business on the front foot.
There is a glaring inconsistency between the noble aims of this Green Paper and the threats made by the Prime Minister to turn Britain into an offshore tax haven if she fails in her Brexit negotiations. Until now, the industrial strategy has seemingly consisted of one deal, made in secret, with Nissan. If the Nissan deal didn't last 6 months, how can businesses be confident of the other commitments in this Green Paper? It's often said correctly that an industrial strategy is a long-term project and that to work it must outlast particular governments. With this in mind, I can pledge our support for its broad aims from this side of the chamber. But I feel compelled to ask, can the Secretary of State count on the same from his own side? When we previously debated the industrial strategy here, one of his own honourable friends said they had 2 problems with it. One was industrial and the other was strategy.
However good this industrial strategy may be, we have to accept that the biggest threat to Scotland's economy, and I believe the UK economy, is the lack of access to the markets and the skilled people that come through our EU membership. Will he give serious consideration to the Scottish Government's plans that would see Scotland maintain its membership of the European single market?
There's one area of infrastructure where Britain lags behind all our competitors enormously, and that's with the cost of childcare. Childcare in Britain costs more than every other OECD country apart from Switzerland and takes up over 40% of the average wage. And yet it's hardly mentioned in his Green Paper. This is the way to liberate the talent of women. What's he going to do about it?
In the Green Paper that the Secretary of State has brought forward, there's mention of an overhaul of technical and vocational education. Can I say to him, I think what this country needs is a cultural change, a shift to valuing technical and vocational education and skills education as highly as it does academic education. And until that changes, the Secretary of State will not achieve what he wants, however much all of us want him to.
The Prime Minister's strategy lacks concrete proposals for Wales. And considering our £5 billion trade and good debt surplus with the EU, Wales is set to suffer most as a result of the pursuit of a brutal Brexit. Does the Minister accept that doing nothing to counter the loss of EU convergence funding will serve only to exacerbate the already significant geographical, wealth and earnings inequalities which characterise the British state?
May I welcome this wide-ranging discussion of government policies at this time, even if the broad buffet of good things outlined will unleash a torrent of insatiable demands, not least from the Davos business leaders jetting back with their government advisers to barge their way to the front of the table. So will my right honourable friend assure me that his agenda will be set by entrepreneurs?
Greg Clark assured him there would be, as he put it, no cosy clubs for the incumbents.
Where does the crucial role of free markets sit in this strategy?
It runs through every page of the strategy, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Laughter at that diplomatic reply there from the Business Secretary, Greg Clark. At the start of the day, the writs were moved for 2 by-elections following the departure of 2 Labour MPs.
I beg to move that Mr. Speaker to issue his warrant to the Clerk of the Crown to make out a new writ for the electing of a member to serve in this present
Both elections will be held on the 23rd of February. One is to replace Jamie Reid, who represented Copeland. He's taken a job at Sellafield Nuclear Power Plant. The other replaces Stoke-on-Trent Central's Tristram Hunt, who is becoming the director of London's Victoria and Albert Museum. Now, moves which would allow local councils in England to keep all the proceeds from business rates raised in their area have had their first main debate in the Commons. The Local Government Finance Bill will also enable councillors to vary the level of business rates. Ministers say the move would encourage local authorities to boost business, increasing the income from local taxes that can be spent in the area.
I am often told that local authorities lack meaningful incentives to grow their local economies. They tell me the system is over-centralised, that residents see no connection between the level of local taxation and the level of services they receive, that the proceeds of local growth disappear into national coffers, forcing councils to go cap in hand asking Whitehall for funding. Mr. Deputy Speaker, that is not good enough. Local authorities, local businesses and local communities deserve a better deal, and this bill will provide it.
It could exacerbate the social care crisis and leave council taxpayers having to foot even more of the bill for local services. Badly introduced, it could deepen regional inequality and increase the divisions between those areas with a large business community and those with more entrenched barriers to growth. We support the principle of 100% business rate retention, but it needs to be accompanied by a redistribution formula which redresses the divide between those councils that do have sizable business rates income already and those that don't.
The Shadow Local Government Minister, Gareth Thomas. You're watching Monday in Parliament, our top story. The Defence Secretary says he has full confidence in the Trident nuclear deterrent, but has refused to give any details on press reports suggesting a missile went off course during a test last Now, last week, Surrey County Council announced it would be holding a referendum to find out whether voters would approve a big rise in council tax to pay for better social care. The council said care was in crisis, a message that's been echoed elsewhere in England. MPs on the Communities and Local Government Committee heard the views of 3 people who use adult social care services.
My main worry, I think, comes from not that even that my quality of life would improve, but that if my condition gets worse and I don't know what's going to happen in the future, that the care won't increase to even be dignified, really. I know of local authorities now that say at night time, if you need assistance going to the toilet now, it's now legally acceptable for them to just say we'll use incontinence pads even if you're not incontinent, because you can't have a nighttime carer. Now, I don't need that, fortunately, at the moment, but that is a fear for me, that if one day I needed that support, would it actually be provided?
I have been in the process of recently having health professionals and a social care professional in terms of an OT making a recommendation, and the panel, who have never met me, making a decision around providing something that's £500 cheaper, and I have to trial a product that isn't going to work and is wasting my time and the professional's time just to please the panel. So it's all about, kind of, for me, it's all been a very a game of aligning what you need with the people that can often support you in that, and sometimes your voice gets lost within that.
I think people who enter this profession of providing care do so with a sense of vocation and a sense of service and a desire to want to make a difference and to change things and to be of service. And I have to be mindful of not taking that for granted and certainly not abusing it. But it is a messy place to go, this.
I get 6 hours a week for socialisation, whatever that means. And that has to include my food shopping, my hospital appointments, which average 1 a week, going to church, and if I want to go swimming, because none of those things can be separately, they don't get covered otherwise. So by the time you've done that, there is no socialisation left. There's certainly no flexibility, or if a friend suddenly rings up and says, "Oh, do you want to go here?" "Oh, sorry, I've used my hours." So for me, I think it's, you try and get on, don't you, and you try and make the most of the situation. And I do find myself having to make choices sometimes, so there will be times where I think I want to go here, I won't have a shower, or I won't cook a meal that day with my PA. I'll use the time to do the socialisation aspect, because otherwise you become extremely isolated, and that's quite depressing, or it's hard not to feel like I'm a 31-year-old and my friends that were in university with me are all out doing all these things, and actually my life looks extremely different to theirs.
I live in my own home. My own home is becoming more like an institution. I have support, and there are periods of times where I feel really isolated and I need that additional support, but it's not available. And for me, it's been really detrimental, and it's really had a massive impact on my mental ill health. And it's something that I think that lots of people with care and support needs often struggle with. So, the practical stuff is amazing. I'm grateful to live in a country where we do have that system, but sometimes I just feel like I'm a product of a system that is just really functioning. So I'm just like dress, wash, eat, nothing about well-being, nothing about relationships. And the hardest thing is being somebody that has hopes and dreams and aspirations, and you have to sometimes say to yourself and the people around you, that's not possible.
Now, there have been further calls for increased sex and relationships education in schools to tackle online grooming for child abuse. But at Home Office questions, ministers insisted the resources for staying safe online were available and schools were already taking action.
Can I urge the House that people recommend to their constituents that a process of contributing to keeping their own children safe is to take time out to look at the Think You Know campaign on the National Crime Agency, because I as a parent have a role in making sure that my children know what's safe online.
Fiona McTaggart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But actually, Don't children need to be educated about how to help themselves stay safe online? And wouldn't it be the case, if we had compulsory sex and relationships education, that every school could make sure that every child knew how to be safe online?
Can I ask the Honourable Lady to go on to the website of the National Crime Agency and look at the Think You Know campaign? It is tailor-made for children to go through the tutorial online, and it's broken down by age. So my young children have an appropriate curriculum to look at, and it makes a real difference. And there's even one for her, so she could follow it and understand how she can be safe online and make sure children are as well.
The Minister is being far too glib on this. All the research shows the best intermediary for teaching children is someone they trust in a school. That is the truth. And online work doesn't actually become very effective. Isn't it the truth that bullying, exploitation is rampant? And isn't it about time we'd stopped making excuses and took on the Googles and the people who allow this to be transmitted?
Yeah, and it's often done on it.
The honourable gentleman misses a point. We are taking on the Googles and the big internet companies, and also if he spends time in the schools, in the primary schools where my children go to, they are given classes on how to stay safe online. This is not done in a silo where it's just a website. It's a website, it's teachers, it's parents. Everyone has a role in it, and that is being delivered. The challenge we have in the world of the internet is keeping pace with the huge numbers of referrals we get every month from international paedophiles who abuse the internet to exploit our children and take advantage of the very latest technology to keep to make sure that our law enforcement agencies are having to constantly go the extra mile to catch them.
Mr. Speaker, we have had a dreadful local case where an international paedophile ring, such as the one the Minister was mentioning, infiltrated a chat room aimed at 9-year-olds with really dreadful consequences for those children. Could the Minister help us with what investment the government is making to help the police and other law enforcement agencies deal with and stamp out this sort of abuse?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. The National Crime Agency's Child Exploitation and Online Protection Command receives an extra £10 million this year. And in November of 2015, the NCA joined up with GCHQ in a joint operations cell to make sure that we tackle some of the most complicated crimes online.
Labour's Rupert Huck raised the immigration status of EU nationals in the UK, seeking some certainty following the Brexit vote.
People like Mrs. Fabiola Power, Spanish by birth, but married and resident in Acton for decades, now dismayed at having been rejected because they cannot prove either 5 years continuous service with the same employer or having paid in for private health insurance. Can the Home Secretary revisit these rigid requirements that penalise EU nationals like her who've been homemakers or students on short-term contracts or self-employed and end this bureaucratic nightmare?
There is no penalising of people like the lady who the Honourable Lady was referring to. We continue to value the important contribution that EU nationals make to this country, and I would repeat and I would urge the Honourable Lady to follow the advice that I previously set out, which is to reassure constituents like the one she referred to that in fact we are doing our best to ensure that their future will be secured, and the Prime Minister says it will be an early priority to do so.
The Home Secretary Amber Rudd replying there. Now, returning to social care, Labour peers have called on ministers to reverse cuts in funding, which they say have had a knock-on effect on the whole of the National Health Service in England. Raising the matter at question time in the Lords, Lady McDonagh said the government had cut the social care budget by nearly £2 billion.
It is the case that the government have cut £1.8 billion to social care during this period, which has led to the escalation of the £2.5 billion in NHS debt. I don't know whether it's through incompetence or ideology, but the government has set about providing us with the most expensive and the worst system of care for the elderly in the Western world. Can I ask the Noble Lord, the Minister, whether he would use all his powers of persuasion to do what the Chancellor wanted to do last year and persuade the Prime Minister to put more money into local authorities for social care? It will save lives and money.
There are 1 million more over 65-year-olds than there were in 2010. The social care is under a lot of pressure. Of course it is, which is why in the autumn statement additional money was outlined for social care. There is 900 million extra over the next couple of years. The precept is rising faster than it was previously, and we have the Better Care Fund. So there is money going in, but I accept the fact that there is pressure on the system.
The Minister said he accepted there were challenges still there. And that's all from me for now. Christina Cooper's here for the rest of the week, but from me, Joanna Shin, goodbye.